Welcome to my channel Techify with Adil. So today in this video we will be seeing how to manage Microsoft Entra IDs with Microsoft Graph PowerShell. So in the previous video we have seen how we create and manage users and groups in the Entra ID. So mostly that was like one by one cases, like we create user or we invite the external user and manage them. The same we have seen for the group as well. So here we will be using a Microsoft Graph PowerShell SDK in place of manually we go like create one by one. So we will see how that thing is done. So this approach uses the unified Microsoft Graph API, providing a comprehensive and efficient way to automate management tasks across Microsoft 365 services. So since it's an automated helps to automate management tasks, so this will be most useful when it comes to a bulk management or bulk creation of users or devices or groups. So the most recommended is PowerShell 7 or later version for the Microsoft Graph PowerShell SDK. If you are already having Microsoft 7 or later, we no need of any prerequisites. So the basic following requirements will be operating system Windows 10 or later. So obviously most of us will be like everyone will be using 10 or later, and also obviously you would have been gone to 11 already, because Windows 10 is ending the list by October 2025. Then the PowerShell should be 5.1 or the newer versions. So if it's 7, it's the most recommended. Then we will have to install the PowerShell SDK, and if we haven't installed already or you're not using it, then you can use this command to install it. So it's an install module. Then name of the module is Microsoft Graph. The scope is for the current user, so that it is not installed in all the users of your notebook. So the Microsoft when connecting, next is the connecting to the Microsoft Entra with Microsoft Graph PowerShell SDK. So to connect to Microsoft Entra, you have to use this command connect mg graph. Then scope will be user read all, then group read write all, then device read write all. So here you are giving user for all read access, then for the group read and write, and for the device read and write all. So you are connecting with the mg graph with these scopes. So once you are connected, you are ready to execute. Say for one of the example here is to create users using bulk import. So you're going to create a bulk of users. Say example, you need to create hundreds of users. So instead of creating one by one, you can have all their details in a CSV file, and you can use this Microsoft Graph PowerShell to create them. So this is the script you will have to run. So this is the path of the CSV file which contains all the users. So for each user in the users file, so we will be creating a new user with user principal name, which you should be included there. Then given name should be there, surname, display name, job title, department, then nickname, usage location, then password, profile. So the CSV file should contain all these informations to create bulk users. So once you have prepared this CSV file, then already you have done your prerequisites as installed the module already. Then you can go with this command to create your bulk users. Just import the bulk users and it can be created in the Microsoft Entra. So this guide has introduced you connecting to Microsoft Graph and creating bulk users. So further, to explore full potential of automating your Microsoft 365 tasks with Microsoft, you can just go through there are like similar to this is like one of the examples. So similar to this automation, like you can just have your module, and with using the module you can just prepare the scripts, and you can play around. You can do different tasks automated using this module and having some basic scripts written. So next is synchronizing objects from ADDS to Microsoft Entra ID. That is your Active Directory domain services of on-prem to the Microsoft Entra ID. So numerous deployment scenarios for Microsoft Entra don't involve an on-prem ADDS environment. As we so far we have seen through all the sections, we have noticed this part. So Microsoft Entra don't involve the on-prem part. However, for many organizations that have some services on their networks and some services in the cloud, synchronization and integration between Microsoft Entra ID and on-premises ADDS is the way to deliver the best user experience. So it depends upon the company's or organization's infrastructure. So if some companies have their main services running some on their networks and some on their cloud, so the easiest way or the best way to deliver the best experience for users is to synchronize and integrate both the networks, that's Microsoft Entra ID to the on-prem ADDS. So directory synchronization enables user, group and contact synchronization between on-premises Active Directory and Microsoft Entra ID. In its simplest form, you install a directory synchronization component on a server in your on-premises domain. All your user accounts, groups and contacts from Active Directory then replicate to Microsoft Entra ID. Those accounts can then sign in and access Azure services. So with Microsoft Entra ID free or basic, the synchronization flow is in one direction from local ADDS to Microsoft Entra ID. However, with Microsoft Entra ID P1 or P2, you can replicate some attributes from Microsoft Entra ID to Active Directory domain services. For example, you can configure Entra ID to write passwords back to on-premises ADDS. So so to understand more simply is, if you are going to use Microsoft Entra ID free or basic versions, then the synchronization is always from the local to cloud. It's just one direction. So anything you create in the local, like say you're creating a new user, there's a new user joined, so you're creating a new user that will be synced to the cloud. Instead, if you are creating a new user or change of password or any update you have done to the user in the cloud, you're directly doing changes in the Entra ID, that will not be synced back to your on-premises. So the two places will have two different details which will be causing some issues. So if it is a basic or free version you're using, then you will have to always do the updates with your local on-prem so that it's syncing to the cloud. If you are having Entra ID P1 or P2 versions, then that can replicate some attributes from Entra ID to Active Directory DS. So if you're doing a change or update of the password, then that can be back synced to your ADDS. So it's very important which version are you using so that you understand their way of working. So you have your this direct synchronization enables for the user, group and contact synchronization between both the places. Then you can start working with both the networks, that's your on-prem and also ADDS. So Microsoft Entra Connect. So Microsoft provides Microsoft Entra Connect to perform directory synchronization between Entra ID and ADDS. So by default, Microsoft Entra Connect synchronizes all users and groups. So if you don't want to synchronize your entire on-prem ADDS synchronization, for the Microsoft Entra supports limited filtering like OU, because your on-prem we have the categories like domain-wise, user attributes, then OU, we have all this hierarchical categorization, right? So we can use them, filter it, and we synchronize only those, and we don't need to synchronize the entire ADDS. When directory synchronization is enabled, you have the following authentication options. So you can have a separate cloud password. So the cloud password will be different. Then synchronized password, if you have enabled the password synchronization. Then pass through authentication. So when you enable pass through authentication, the Microsoft Entra ID uses the cloud identity to verify that the user is valid, and then passes that authentication request to Entra Connect. This option provides true SSO because users don't receive multiple prompts to authenticate cloud services. So still you will have two different authentication, but the check of on-prem to the cloud is done by the Microsoft Entra Connect, and user no need to do multiple authentication. It's something like it will look like an SSO. It will be like SSO. Then federated identities. So if you configure federated identities, meaning the authentication process works similarly to pass-through authentication, but ADFS performs the authentication on premises instead of Microsoft Entra Connect. So just in the third option, like pass-through authentication, if you're replacing this Microsoft Entra Connect with ADFS authentication services, then it will be federation identities. So instead of the work what Microsoft Entra Connect does will be replaced by ADFS. This authentication method provides claims-based authentication that multiple cloud apps can use. So your password directory synchronization is enabled, then you can have these 4 types of authentication based on your requirements. You want to keep the password separately, and users will have to remember 2 passwords, then you can have separate cloud password, then you can synchronize them. But this is not SSO. Users still have to authenticate 2 times. Like they need to authenticate for cloud services, they need to use the cloud password to authenticate, and this one receive the prompt. They will receive both the prompts, so they have to authenticate. Then pass-through synchronization is Microsoft Entra Connect will help you to do the second authentication backend. So it will be like a SSO for users. Then federated identities is still the same as pass-through, but the authentication request passes through ADFS instead of Microsoft Entra Connect. So these are the different authentications we can use when you are synchronizing the Microsoft Entra ID to ADDS. So when you install Microsoft Entra Connect, you need to sign in as a local administrator of the computer on which you are performing the installation. Additionally, you will receive prompts for credentials to the local ADDS and Microsoft Entra ID. So the local ADDS account must be a member of the enterprise administrator group. The first thing is when you install, you will need to sign as local administrators, because when you are installing the Microsoft Entra Connect, you need the admin account permission of the computer which you are installing it. Secondly, when you are connecting 2 places, that is local ADDS to the Entra ID, you must have the credentials of both the locations. Like local ADDS, you must have the credentials enterprise administrator group, and also you must have the permission in Microsoft Entra ID as well. So Microsoft Entra ID account must be a global administrator. So you should have the admin permissions for all these 3 portions: the local computer, ADDS, global ADDS, enterprise administrator group, and for Microsoft Entra ID you should be a global administrator. So you should be admin on these 3 locations. If you are using ADFS or separate SQL Server instance, you will also receive prompts for credentials with management permissions for those resources as well. The computer that is running Microsoft Entra Connect needs to communicate with Microsoft Entra ID. If the computer needs to use proxy server for internet access, then more configuration is necessary. No inbound connectivity from internet is necessary, because Microsoft Entra Connect initiates all the communication. So everything is outbound. Microsoft Entra Connect must be a domain member. Must be on a domain member. So meaning the local computer which you are installing here, that should be a domain member, and you will be using the local administrator's account to authenticate for the installation. When you install the Microsoft Entra Connect, you can use express settings or custom settings. So most organizations that synchronize a single ADDS for us with the Microsoft Entra Connect use the express settings options. Meaning there will be some of the settings will be default there, then that will be used. That's the express settings. When you choose Express settings, the following options are selected. So SQL Server Express is installed and configured. All identities in the forest are synchronized. All attributes are synchronized. Password synchronization is enabled. And initial synchronization is performed immediately after install. Automatic upgrade is enabled. So say example, you don't want the password synchronization to happen, then you must go to the customization settings. Then you have to remove this. So similarly, if you're okay with all the settings, then you can just go with the Express settings, which will be faster as well. You can enable other options during installation when you select the custom settings, such as like pass-through authentication, federation with ADFS, select an attribute for matching, filtering based on OU, then exchange hybrid, password, group, and device write back. So all these settings you can customize when you are using the customize settings option. After deploying Microsoft Entra Connect, the following happens, like new user, group and connect objects in on-premises Active Directory are added to the Microsoft Entra ID. This would be the very basic first thing. However, no license for cloud services such as M365 are automatically assigned to the objects. So when you are synchronizing, only it synchronizes the users, group or contact objects. It doesn't create any license for those users in the cloud. So users in the cloud will be without users, same as your on-prem, just users will be replicated but no license will be provided. Attributes of existing user, group or contact objects that are modified in on-premises Active Directory are modified in the Microsoft Entra ID. However, not all on-premises Active Directory attributes synchronize with Microsoft Entra ID. Existing user, group and contact objects that are deleted from on-premises Active Directory are deleted from Microsoft Entra ID as well. So you're doing any kind of deletion on on-premises, the Active Directory is deleted from the Microsoft Entra ID. Then existing user objects that are disabled on premises are disabled in Azure. However, licenses are automatically unassigned because the licenses is not synced from the on-prem. So in the first point you already seen the license is only creating the users and it's not syncing. So here as well, when you are disabling the user, the licenses are also has to be manually unassigned. It is not automatically done.